So what I am going to do this morning is talk for just a few minutes about some ways to background mostly people, the business owners and the folks that you're trying to get more information on to figure out who their connections are, stuff like that. I've got a sheet which has lots of different links on it, and I'm not going to get through most of them today, but I'll make that available to you guys so you can mess with it. And if you have questions about using any of the specific ones that I either do or don't get to, you can always just reach out to me and contact me directly. So the first thing I want to do, and this may sound a little basic to you guys, but I swear it's not, is the Google Advanced Search. If you don't regularly use this for a couple things, I cannot overstate the value of doing so. I really can't. So first of all, I just did a regular search for the University of Missouri, 367 million results, whatever. To do the advanced search, there's more than one way to find it, but you can go to Settings and then Advanced Search. And then what you get, we're only going to talk about a couple things involved in the advanced search today, but I'm telling you, it's incredibly powerful when you use Google this way. I'm going to clear the university out of this because that's not what I want now. And what I'm going to do is you'll see that there's lots of different ways you can search specifically for exact words. Leaving words out can be really important too. If you've got somebody with a common name you're trying to background and there's someone famous with the same name, you can put in certain words you don't want to come up. Like if the company that you're investigating is run by a dude named Brad Pitt, but not like that Brad Pitt, you can put not actor, not Hollywood, not Angelina, whatever, and you can narrow down some of the crap you don't want to get. That's fine. What I want to focus on is doing a site or domain search. This is incredibly powerful if you guys don't regularly do this. And I'd recommend doing it for all the beats you cover, not just for COVID-related stuff. What it does is it focuses all the power of Google on a specific website. And Google can search a website so much better than a website's normal search engine can. It'll find all kinds of things you won't find otherwise. And it will also find things they don't necessarily want you to find yet. Even stuff that's parked on a website and has no live link to it, if it's sitting there, the Google Advanced Search will find it. And you can come up with all manner of things from companies, from nonprofits, from government agencies, doesn't make any difference. So first I would do missouri.edu. And if I just did that search like it is, what that would do is it would allow Google to search nothing but the Mizzou website, which is one thing, the university that I both teach at and cover here with student journalists. But then what I might do is go back to all these words and do COVID, right? So now what I'm going to do is look for only things that mention COVID on the university website. And so I got 14,000 hits immediately. And by the way, I've been doing this. I did this all spring to generate stories, to look for things, to see what the latest the university was putting out, both in research, in policies, and all kinds of stuff. But then I might want to narrow it down more. I might want to look for certain kinds of reports. I might want to look for data. And you can do that by doing file type. And this is really powerful stuff. It only gives you a few choices, but once you run the search, you can change it to any kind of file type you want. So let's say I'm just looking for reports. I might try to do PDFs first just to see what happens. So now I'm searching for COVID, the keyword, on the Mizzou domain, any PDFs that have been posted. And I got a bunch. And now what I could do, I could just go through these, or then I could further refine my search a couple of different ways. You'll notice you can change the file type here. You can literally put any kind of file extension you want in there and rerun the search and look for things, Excel files. Remember, there's XLS, which is old Excel files, XLSX, which is newer Excel files, just a small thing. For those of you who do mess with other kind of data, if you ever have, you can put in DBFs, all kinds of data stuff. I've found PowerPoints that have been posted before by like city officials and stuff like that that can be really useful. It's incredibly powerful. And then you can also go back, and if COVID's not specific enough, you can put in other keywords and you can continue to narrow that search down, and it gets you to cut through all the clutter really quickly, and you can search the site better, and you sometimes find things they didn't necessarily want you to find. The one caveat I'll give you for doing the search like this is never go with a document or a presentation or anything you find without calling the agency. Sometimes things aren't live on a website for a reason. They're not done, they're not ready, they're not accurate. So finding stuff is fine, but it's just step one. If anyone has questions while I'm going, just throw them in the chat and I hopefully will see them, or Chris or somebody will see them and they can yell at me. Because otherwise I'm just going to barrel through because there's a few things I want to show you guys. So anyway, the Google Advanced Search, specifically the domain and the file type, really, really useful stuff. All right. Another thing I like to use Google for a lot is when I backgrounding people is something I always have really gotten into, both as a reporter and then working at the university too. I just think it's really fun to find people who don't want to be found. It's just a cool challenge. And you don't need paid services, guys. You can, if you're in a big newsroom and you have LexisNexis or Accurant or something like that, that's great. But you do not need it. You really don't. So what I would do with a Google search, there's two things. First of all, so I'm going to search for me because I'm incredibly narcissistic. Ask anyone who knows me, and it's fine. But the stuff that comes up at first are things that aren't that surprising, right? I teach at Mizzou. I have a Twitter account. I run our state government reporting program. Blah blah blah. It's fine. It's fine. Some boards I'm on. It's very good for basic stuff. But what I find to be super useful when I'm looking for connections and social connections among people is do a Google image search. And here's why. You're all of a sudden going to find other things which connect you to people in ways that the regular Google search won't. You'll get photos of places I've been and spoken at and organizations I've worked for, trips that I've taken and done stuff, groups that I've been with, let's see, people that I know. Here's a former student. Here's a woman that I serve on a board of directors with. And when you click on the photo, you can usually figure out what the connection is. But the point is, what this allows me to do is find other people that this person might know, find other groups they might belong to, find events that they've spoken at. So the image search to me is really worth doing in addition to a regular search when looking for social connections for folks. Cool. All right. And by the way, but I can click on almost any of these photos and know how they're actually relevant. Some of them don't seem it, but every single one of them pretty much ties back to me in some weird way. All right. I'm going to move on from that unless there's any questions.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
So do you just find a photo on the web and just pull that back up into the Google image search?
Well, what I'll do is I'll look for the there's a couple different things you can do. Let me see if I can go back. So the first thing I'll do is just look and see what's posted here. If there's something interesting that I can't figure out, I'll click on it to see why it showed up in this particular search, right? I'll do that first. But you can also do reverse image searching in Google and with other tools. And what's that's useful for, I'm not going to do it right now, but for example, this is my little stock photo that I use whenever I go speak anywhere or do anything, right? Because I don't like to have my picture taken and that's it. I used to use this one until fairly recently, but it's way younger. And at some point I felt people would be disappointed when I actually showed up, you know? So I stopped using that. But what you can do, and I'm going to show you a couple different tools for this, but you can do a reverse search on this by uploading it as an image by clicking on the camera, and then Google will look to see where else this specific picture has shown up on the internet. So anywhere else that I've used this photo to show that I've spoken or done stuff should come back up. And that can be really useful too, especially for CEOs or executives. If you want one way to figure out if someone serves on lots of boards, for example, is to do this kind of search. They tend to use the same photo everywhere they go. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I do it two different ways. And then I've got, let me show you real quick. On this handout that I got, here we go. I got a few different image search tools you can use. I don't know if any of you guys have ever used TinEye, but it's nothing but an image search. It's like Google just for pictures. And TinEye also does reverse image searching, so it can be pretty cool. Photo forensics, this one's really cool because what it does is it allows you to get the metadata off a photo, which can be really helpful in looking for the accuracy or the timing of a picture. Like, let's say you find a picture of somebody with somebody else and you're thinking, God, is that recent or was that 5-10 years ago? And you can't tell. Photo forensics will actually pull up and pull the metadata from the back of the picture. Like on that photo of me right here, if you call up this one, you'll find out that a woman named Amber Garrett took this picture in 2016. You'll know the Nikon picture she used. I did it yesterday just to see. And it's crazy. And Amber, it turns out, if you look her up, doesn't matter, but she was a grad student at Mizzou. On this one, you'd find out it was taken in 2003 by a staff photographer at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. The point is you can sort of accuracy check and timeline by getting the metadata from photos, which can be really helpful too. And there's other sites that do it, but photo forensics works pretty well for that. Does that answer your question, Kana? Cool. All right, awesome. All right, now I just want to show you a couple of sites that are good for getting people's addresses, where they live, relatives, and also cell phone numbers, which I've found to be the bane of my personal existence until very recently. And I want to watch the time here. But the site, this site, I just found this one earlier this year, and this one's awesome. Like I use this site the Speaker of the House in Missouri, our lawmakers don't return calls, don't return texts, don't return emails. You either get them on the phone or you don't. So, and the Speaker of the House is not from our part of Missouri. So I just put his name in this thing and hit search, and I got a cell phone number for him, gave it to one of my reporters, and it was the right number. It's the right number every time. It's crazy. It's called cyberbackgroundchecks.com. If we put me in there, and you can narrow it down by city or state if you want to. My name's unique enough where I'm not gonna. And so check it out. That's my home address. That is correct. That Neff Hall is actually where IRE was. It's a little bit old, but it's close enough. That's the house I used to live in when I worked in Dallas, Fort Worth. That again, my current home. That's my home number. That is my cell number, y'all. And when I click on view details, what I found on this site is the first number that it lists. Also, it shows you timing, right? Wireless. This is the most recent one. This is my current cell phone number. So you have my home number, my cell phone number, a map to my house if you want to come say hello. All fast, all for free. And I've used this so many times to get cell phone numbers for elected officials, for business leaders, and it's almost always the first cell number that they list. The first wireless number tends to be the most current one. I've found it to be, I mean, you guys might try it and find differently and email me if you do, but I've found it to be almost 100% accurate and free. So this has been a real game changer for me on reaching especially elected officials, and especially now because the minute we shut down for COVID, normally we would just wander around the Capitol and interview people, but we couldn't do that anymore. So getting their cell phone suddenly became incredibly important since nobody was in the building, right? So cool. I know I need to, let me see, I want to show you a few other things real quick. And if I go too long, just someone yell at me and I will stop, I swear.
Yeah, so Mark, so we have 15 minutes and
okay.
We want to have questions for both of you. So, you know, Mark, keep going for a little bit. And if somebody has a question, put it in chat and we'll kind of.
Yeah, I'll just do 3 or 4 more things and then I'll stop. It's fine. This site I found a couple sites that I hadn't used before that were super helpful that I did want to show you guys. This one is advancedbackgroundchecks.com. And what I like about this one, it's not working right now. All right, we'll use another one because for some reason it's not working. All right, no worries. Let me lower this. Is this one working? Yeah, okay. So you can do, one thing I wanted to point out is when you're searching for somebody on Google, do not just use their name. Never just use their name. Also search by any piece of information you have. Searching by someone's cell phone can get you all kinds of results you don't find anywhere else. For example, I once got found by somebody who was looking for me when my cell phone number showed up on the resume of one of my students who listed me as a connection and had all my contact information on it, which kind of sucked. I didn't put that out there, but somebody else did. So I always search by, if I know someone's email address, I'll search by it. If I don't know it, I'll make up some Gmail addresses thinking maybe that's what it is. Many people, you know, use variations on a theme and see what comes up. So searching for my cell phone number on this free site brings you, all right, first of all, Melissa Rezabak, who had the number before me. I still get calls for her from like creditors, and I've had this phone since 2008. But you keep going down, and here am I. That is my correct age, and I just had a birthday. That is my middle name, so you now have my full name. That is my address. These are addresses where I've lived. Guys, 8114 Braesdale, I moved out of that house when I was 17, never lived there again. Still shows up on the Google. I moved out of that house in 1986 when I graduated from college. Somehow the internet still knows that address goes with me. My folks don't even live there anymore. That freaks me out. But this is where I lived when I worked for the Charlotte Observer. This is where I looked for. It's crazy, all right? These are almost all accurate previous phone numbers for me. And then what gets really creepy is that's my wife, that's my brother, that's my daughter, that's my dad, that's my mom, that's my son. Rose is my grandmother who died in the 80s. And Andy is my nephew. Holy smokes, right? How does this site know all this? Magic. And now you can all go ahead and call my daughter if you want to, or my son, et cetera, et cetera. So there's links for other sites like this. I'm not going to show you any more of these, but a lot of these things work really well. They're all free. Then real quick, I'm not going to show you, but let me just mention a couple things. If you don't know how to do it, backgrounding a website can be super helpful, especially like when Cheryl was talking about brand new companies and stuff. You can look up the domain for not everything, but many websites you can find domain information, which gives you contact information, who actually owns it, how to get a phone number. A lot of times websites, don't give you phone numbers. You have to fill out one of those web forms and no one ever gets back to you. Doing a domain search will often at least give you one phone number into the building. And I've used that to get around that crap before when I wanted to call somebody. So you might try that. And then I'm not going to have time for today, but I'm going to share this with you guys. These deep web search tools, these search social media and help you look for connections. I really like That's Them. You might want to check that one out. And let's see. Then I have some social media search tools here. The Twitter, I really like Follow Me. The cool thing on Follow Me is it allows you to see who somebody else mentions the most in Twitter and who else mentions them the most. So if you're trying to find friends, associates, and connections on Twitter, follow.me is really, really useful for that, for finding other people's best Twitter connections. And it's and then you can direct message the people on Twitter to get them. I found a couple new things for Instagram, which are kind of cool. So anyway, I'll stop here for now, but I'm going to share all this with you guys. And I'm very sincere when I say, I'll make sure I put my contact information on it. If you want to know what one of these does or something, just give me a call. All right, done.
Yeah, great. So yeah, so all of you, all the fellows will get this full tip sheet.
Yep.
Mark, do you have a copy of the Ira Handbook that just is coming out now?
Oh, and in fact, I don't even have my copy yet. But yeah, the Ira Handbook is a book that I always used as a journalist as well, and I teach it in a class. It hadn't been redone for about 12 or 15 years, and there's a new edition which just came out now. And one thing that I'll say about it is, for the first time, they're offering it as an ebook, so it's way cheaper. And it's got all sorts of resources. It's got advice from people like Jim Steele, Diana, Cheryl in it, and
I'm in it.
Yeah. So we went back through and we redid the entire book, and it's all updated with new links. A lot of the stuff there's a whole chapter on business, which gets into the SEC and all kinds of websites and ways to track documents and stuff. So check that out. It's the Investigative Reporters Handbook. Thanks, Chris.
And can I echo that, Chris? It is an amazing book, and I can't wait to read the updated version because I've used it in my investigative class for years, and I'm so glad that it's finally updated. And I can't wait. I can't wait to use it when I return to teach my class in January.
Mark, on the IRE side, I'm seeing the handbook edition 5. Is that the one you're on, or are you edition 6?
6 is the new one.
6 is the new one. Okay. All right. So we have 10 minutes for general questions. Mark, maybe if you can stop sharing the screen.
Oh, sorry. Yep.
And just folks, if anybody has any questions, you can shout them out, or we will look at the chat here. Most people are chatting that they are mortified yet amazed by these people search tools.
I know.
So any other general questions that anybody wants to get into?
That was Karen who was mortified, but I bet you she's going to be the first one on those sites.
I'll tell you real quick that I do this in my class, and I make everybody background themselves using all these tools, because there's 2 reasons to do that. I'd actually recommend that to all of you guys. If you run your own name through these sites, you figure out how well they work and how well they don't by figuring out how accurate they are, and you can find the ones you really like. And then I make my students do it because they inevitably find things they wish weren't out there, especially on social media, and they clean their act up a little bit before they start looking for jobs.
Does anybody, any Parks and Rec fans out there? There's a great episode where Ron Swanson realizes how much the internet knows about him. He puts in his address, a picture of his house pops up. He grabs his computer and throws it in the trash. So questions out there?
Go ahead, Karen.
Go ahead, Julie. I'm asking questions a lot, so go ahead.
Hi, I'm Julie Carsmith. I'm with the AP out in Ohio. And my question is to both of you, once you do your backgrounding, can you talk a little bit about then when you do that reach out with the actual person, any tips there, how that goes? Do you ever run into people like, how the heck did you find me? And does it make life a little more difficult?
Okay, I'll quickly. So you'd be amazed at the people who don't ask how you found me, who don't ask like how you got this information. But I remember years ago, this has nothing to do with COVID, but when I was, during my 22 years at the Post, one of the stories I covered was Columbine, the shooting at Columbine. Some of you are too young to remember this, but for those of you who are not, and I remember there was a sheriff the flack for the sheriff's department gave these morning briefings, and I needed to get him before the briefing, and I could not find a number for him anywhere. And so I called up the best researcher in the business, Alice Kreitz at the Washington Post, who found a number for him, his home number. And I remember calling him, and he was like, how did you get this number? I've been working with reporters for 25 years and nobody's ever gotten my home number. How did you do it? And my response to him was, we're the Washington Post. We got good researchers. And that was the end of that. But I mean, it's rare that people ask, like, which amazes me, because when you want to know, like, how'd you get my number? How'd you get my address? It's amazing. For me, at least. Mark might have a different story about how.
No, I agree. I prep reporters, but it's rarely necessary. Like when we called the speaker's private cell number, he didn't even ask how this student got his number. He just talked to her. But what I'd prepped her in case they ask is usually simply to say, we were searching you online and we found this number. We weren't sure it was yours, but we wanted to try it. That's usually what I'll say, because we're not doing anything that doesn't just get publicly available information.
Yeah.
So I just tell them, it's nothing creepy. We searched you online. We found this number. We weren't sure it was right, but we thought we'd give it a call.
Yeah.
So, I had a question just about process. So when you're finding stuff about people, like, and you're building your story, are you doing a timeline, like one of the prior speakers talked about, like sort of doing this sort of timeline, building the history of this person? So, like, Cheryl, you talked about, this person's wife was a nurse. Just all these bits and pieces, like, how are you in process, like, as you're reporting, documenting it, or is it like, what are you using, just like sheets or spreadsheets or like whatever?
For me, I'm an Excel girl, and so I put everything into a spreadsheet, everything. Like, it's my life, because it goes back to my tip about staying organized when you're dealing with a lot of documents or you're dealing with a lot of information. And I don't know that at the time when I'm backgrounding, I don't necessarily think timeline, but when I put it into a spreadsheet, I do. Like the wife being a nurse, it's like, oh, okay, that might be how he got this contract somewhere along the line. So when I'm backgrounding, I'm just sort of like throwing everything out there and seeing what sticks and what I get. But then when I put it together, it's sort of like, oh, let me see, like, is there a timeline, and does it make sense?
Yeah, I mean, staying organized is the key. And when I'm backgrounding people, especially, like, you'll find hits. I happen to know all those people are related to me because I'm me, but I might not know that otherwise. So what I do when I'm backgrounding someone is I just keep a list going, and I'll narrow it down slowly. Okay, there's a person with this name in this town and in this town. Then I keep looking. Oh, I see that person also worked there. That's probably the right person. I'm going to focus on the one I found in this place. And here's another person who ties to them. Oh, they've got a connection to that town. So I'll scratch. It's not very scientific. And I still use the legal pad instead of like an Excel sheet. But I'll write it all down, and then I'll circle the ones that seem more right. I'll cross out the ones that get wrong. It's amazing how quickly you can narrow the field down on stuff like this. Because the thing to remember when you're doing these searches is you never do them blind. You always know something about why you're looking for somebody. You know the business that they're involved in, or there's something you know about them, which allows you to start. And if you just keep honing that down, it helps you focus.
And I think too, Karen, the other thing I do, and Mark's right about this, and the other thing I do is, I do an interview with the person, and then you can ask about some of those connections when you're interviewing the person, right? To make sure that, like with the guy from Texas that had the bankruptcy, and I never mentioned the bankruptcy to him because it was so long ago that it really wasn't a part of this story. But I did ask about like his wife, and I was like, oh, what does your wife do? Well, I've learned a long time ago that you never ask a question you don't know the answer to when you're trying to background people. And he told me she was a nurse, and so I think Mark's right. Then you start to eliminate certain things. Like I eliminated the bankruptcy because it wasn't important, but the state tax lien was, because it just happened a year ago. And I asked him about the revenue of $341,000 last year. And he's like, oh, it was a little more than that. And I said, well, what was it? And I said, because this is what I found on Dun and Bradstreet, right? I told him where I found it. He's like, oh, well, it was over $1 million. And then by the end of the conversation, well, it may have been closer to 341,000. So that's how I sort of process of elimination, by also talking to the person, if you can.
I have a question about some of the people search sites. Sometimes when you get basic information, it'll list options for you to purchase additional information. Are those ever worth it? And then secondly, one time I was looking for somebody in Canada, and I don't know if places in other countries where you can find personal information or phone numbers or where they're living, but do you have any ideas on that?
Sure. So a couple quick thoughts on that. First of all, no, those pay sites won't get you hardly anything you can't get for free. The only thing the pay sites are better for, and really most of them don't do it, are legal stuff, right? Like the only reason I ever would even want to use and occasionally ask someone to help me out doing a search with one of the pay sites is if I'm trying to search for court records and I don't know where the person was already from. If I know where they were from, I can do it myself. But if I'm trying to cast a wider net, like a lot of the work Cheryl was doing, you don't necessarily know where a business might have been incorporated or something. That's the only place I've found the pay sites to be worth anything. The rest of it's just the same stuff you can find for free. It might take you a little longer to do it on your own, but to me, I just don't have the money to spend 20, 25 bucks a search, And then on other countries, some of the sites that I've got listed here, many of them are work everywhere. Like everybody uses Google, for example. But for some of the other sites, I'd recommend a website, GIJN.org, the Global Investigative Journalism Network. It's investigative reporters from around the world, and they post resources. So you can look to see if there's anything specific for any country in the world. And I go to that site a lot. In fact, I'm doing some training in a couple of weeks for some journalists in the Republic of Georgia. So I've been gathering stuff from the GIJN site that's more relevant to that part of the world. And you don't have to be a member. All the resources are free. So I'd highly recommend that as well. I'll throw that in the chat.
Well, that's good. Yeah, how I used to do it, when you mentioned people being from another country, how do you find them? Well, back in the day when newspapers had money, I needed to find a guy from DC who was accused of killing his girlfriend and had fled to England. And I tracked him down in London, actually in Brixton, in the Brixton neighborhood. There was no way for me to call him. And so I told my editor, and I said, well, the only way for me to find him is to go there. And she's like, okay. So hopped on a plane, went to London. That doesn't happen anymore. But back in the day, that's how I used to find people in other countries. I miss those days.
All right, we have time for one final very quick question. Otherwise, we'll need to call this quits. Any quick question out there?
Yeah.
Johnny, go ahead.
Hey, Johnny Edwards from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Have you ever been trying to background a company and you've been able to find very little to no footprint and no cooperation and just hit a complete brick wall? And if so, how did you handle that?
For me, I think it was Philikit, the one in Florida, where there was documentation, but there was that one person's name. Had that guy not called me back, I probably would have struggled to find it because it had just been created. And so because he called me back, then I had his name, and then I could find things on him. But I was sort of knocking my head up against the wall with this company. I was like, oh my God, there's only this one person listed and no one else. So but usually you can find a footprint. Am I right, Mark? You can find something.
Yeah, usually private companies are a lot harder than publicly traded companies, of course. That adds to the degree of difficulty for sure, but there's resources out there for that too. And what I would say is one of the things that I've run into, especially with Secretary of State records, which I do use all the time, is that a lot of times the only person that's listed is the registered agent, and they don't really have a connection to the business at all. But sometimes just searching, take any little piece of information you get, even the address of the business, right? If it lists an address for the business, then go Google search the address for the business. Look up the property records. Go to the county where the business is located. Look up the property records. See who owns the property. There's lots of different ways you can start to get in that don't have anything to do with business records themselves. So take every piece. What I would do when I go to a Secretary of State record is I write down every individual piece, every address, every phone number, every name, anything that shows up. And then I'll go back and search each one of those separately, either on Google or through property records or through some of those. Take the phone number you find and do the search. You never know what one of those things might hit on one more lead, which is one more lead.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And with the Philikit, I looked up the address and it was a big business park. And I thought, oh crap, of course it is, right? So then I narrowed it and I just picked and they had suites. Some of them had suites, and I would just call them and say, hey, I'm looking for this business. Do you know, is it next door? Is it across the hall? Do you know about it? Sometimes you get lucky that way too. It's just calling a business that's in the same complex and seeing what they
local news sites. If you see where it's If you see where it's located, go to the local news site, see if they've ever had anything done about them before that mentions the name of somebody. I mean, if you start thinking creatively about it. There's lots of different ways. If all you're trying to do is get a little bit more information or a name or something, there's lots of different ways to sort of try to crack that.